I'm Doris and I'm here to show you about my stock account. Today my stock account has made a loss of $377 US. US stocks closed higher on Monday, focused on the banking crisis. Today, including the post-market price, I've made a total loss of 0.5%, which is a loss of $377. Right now, the net asset of my account is 75,113.59. Right now, the only stock in my account is SQQ, which today made a loss of 377. Today's market closed generally lower, except for the tech industries. Dow Jones Industrial Average closed 1.2% higher, Nasdaq closed 0.39% higher, and S&P 500 closed 0.89% higher. Most of the industries closed higher, especially the banking industry and the oil and gas. On the other hand, the internet retail closed significantly lower. Investors were hopeful about the easing of the banking crisis after the Swiss government planned a mandatory UBS takeover. Against the backdrop of the banking crisis, the market is focused on the Federal Reserve and its monetary policy outlook. Bank stocks were mixed, with the First Republic closing down more than 47%. JP Morgan Chase and Morgan Stanley closed higher. Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Schwab closed lower. Markets also believe that many may need to be done to restore confidence in the banking system after U.S. regulators support uninsured deposits at the Silicon Valley banks and provide new funds to the troubled bank a week ago. The turmoil in the financial sector over the past 2 weeks has added to the risk of uncertainty over the Fed's interest rate decision on Wednesday. The Fed will hold a monetary policy meeting this week and announce its decision on Wednesday. According to CSE data guided by Fed funds future contracts, a 25 basis point rate hike this week is about 57% likely and 38% likely not. Given the rapid spread of turmoil in financial markets, many expect Fed Chairman Jerome Powell to start easing the aggressive austerity movements that began in March 2022. Goldman Sachs does not expect the Fed to raise interest rates this week. The bank said, "We expect the FOMC to pause raising interest rates at this week's meeting due to pressure on the banking system." While policymakers have taken aggressive steps to support the financial system, markets do not seem fully convinced that these efforts to support small and medium-sized banks are sufficient. While the means of a fight against an inflation pause, an inflation issue does not seem as urgent as last summer because short-term inflation expectations have fallen sharply and long-term inflation expectations remain stable, Goldman said. Swiss banking group agreed to buy rival Credit Suisse for Swiss francs $30 billion, US $3.23 million. Agreed to bear $54 billion in loss. The new combined bank has more than $5 trillion in assets. Swiss regulators responded for steps to arrange the deal to avoid confidence crisis spillover into the broader financial system. The deal is expected to close by the end of the year. Shortly after UBS announcement of the acquisition deal, the Fed announced that it will conduct joint liquidity operation with 2 other central banks. Several central banks, including Bank of America and Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, the European Central Bank, the Swiss national banks have agreed to increase the frequency of the dollar swap arrangements from weekly to daily, from Monday, March 20th to 2nd to at least the end of April. UBS acquisition of Credit Suisse. The Swiss finance minister said the bankruptcy of a major bank in the world could have irreparable results for the financial markets. Fed Chairman Colin Powell and the U.S. Treasury Janet Yellen both welcomed the UBS's acquisition of Credit Suisse on Sunday. Powell, Yellen, and said in a joint statement, "We welcome the announcements by the Swiss author itself in support of financial stability today." ETC ECB President Christine Lagarde also welcomed this shift. The swift action, if Swiss author says, so, it says, I welcome the swift action and decision. This helps to restore properly market conditions and ensure finance stability. The Eurozone banking quarter is resilient and full of price and stability. Mr. Art Hogan, Chief Market Strategist at Riley Wealth Management, said UBS's acquisition of its troubled competitor will undoubtedly help increase overall concerns about the stability of the global ranking crisis. ING warns that the finance sector has not ended. The group's analysis terms stressed, although the risk of a black swan is low, the financial system is not over. But traders may be eager for regulators to do more to stop the slide at the regional banks. Shares of First Republic Bank continue to fall Monday. Even on Thursday, when U.S. banks pledged to deposit $30 billion for at least 120 days, the stock proposed a huge drop last week. Its share fell 72% in a week. And Hogan said, I think the market is overcorrecting the two regional banks, which made many precedent an opportunity. He said, as we enter the new week, we may see that market chasing large money center banks and the energy complexes because I thought it is some serious overreaction in the market. Michael Wilson, a prominent Morgan Stanley analyst, warns that investors have misunderstood the ballot for Silicon Valley Bank savers and should not buy stocks. He said, from a stock market perspective, the event of the past week meant a profound impact on the economy. With less availability of credit could be an issue that ultimately convinced market participants to that equity risk return is too low. He believes that Wall Street gains last week came from confusion among U.S. officials. We think this is similar to what we have heard from some clients that the Fed and the Fed Insurance Corporation is essential, a form of quantitative easing, and provides an opportunity for bonds to move higher. He also said the pressure on the banking system could mark the meaning of the end of the bear market, but that process would be painful and vicious. That's all I have for today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and like. See you next episode.